You're listening to the Anfield Wrap. My name's Adam Smith. This is AFQ Football, and it's live. Thought I'd do that because he's probably got it like copyrighted or some shit. So, right, we've started with a question, really good one actually, from Dave Beattie, who says, Shankly went from 1967 to 1971 without winning a trophy. The crowd never turned against him. Would this generation of fans turn against Jurgen if the same thing happened? That's basically the gist of it. Will the cop turn on Jurgen if we don't win for 5 years? Let's start with Neil.
It depends how you don't win. So if it's a team that's coming second and making Champions League finals, then the answer will be no. If it's a team that's coming sixth and not getting near anything, then the answer would be, I think it would, to a degree. So I think how you don't win matters, but I think also how you don't win in terms of how you play and how you address game by game matters. So do I think ultimately what would happen is there'd be a bit of, I don't think this fella's going to win a final anytime soon, would start, or we're not quite there, or there'd be a bit of pressure around the ownership, or a little bit of final piece of the jigsaw chat if they were very, very close to winning. But if they were a distance away from winning, and Shankly in that period, he's not a distance away from winning. There's a couple of times the league title goes down to the last weekend of the season, or like in a really weird late 60s, early 70s way, 3 teams have got games in hand that they play like a week and a half after the last game of the season, and no one quite understands why, and then Liverpool don't win the league. So I think if it was in a similar-ish vein to that, then as long as there was also European adventures, then I think he'd be all right. But if it was coming 7th, coming 8th, and getting knocked out of anything you were in dead early, then I think people would rightly, frankly, grumble.
John, I think Neil said something there that I think maybe gives Klopp a secret weapon almost to protect him from criticism, which was, he mentioned the owners. Like, it feels like that would be the grumble that people would have long before the manager, do you think?
I mean, there'd be, a lot more hashtags, Adam. I think that is to say. I think I'm interested in who's asked this question, by the way. Oh, okay. See, I was interested in if they were young or old, and you look terrific. I was going to say you're not quite
64?
either. I was going to say you're not quite either. So you.
Do you live by Robbo?
There we are.
It's the fountain of youth that is the River Alt.
Yeah, okay. Because I was going to say that, I am led to believe that there was always grumblers, and there was, they sat in the main stand, and there was always maybe people. I am led to believe, exactly. Yeah, always the main stand was sort of always there, I think, and so I think to answer the question, pretty much like any time, there would be, certain people moaning, certain people, being pessimistic, and then other people, thinking, oh, we'll be all right, we'll win it next year, and then sort of everyone, in between. I think, what has changed, and Adam's said it there, and your point to me is the ownership thing, and I remember, never being too sort of concerned about ownership until obviously the Hicks and Gillette business, when we very much were, and then obviously that's heightened things, and certain countries buying certain football clubs has pushed that on a little bit more, and people see things and maybe want a bit for themselves, and so I think it's a fair point, Adam, that probably what would happen would there be a lot more pressure on the owners to sell to someone who's got more money.
I should point out at this stage that I'm pretty certain Dave bought me a pint in the interval, which was very kind of him, and if it wasn't you and it was somebody else, then pressure's on you for after the show. Josh, you're young, so you're part of the cancel culture. Will you be wanting Jurgen out if he doesn't win a trophy in 5 years?
No, and I think opinions are always sort of more divided on these things, and people maybe think it is particularly Liverpool. If you think about the sort of recent Liverpool managers down the years who have got the bullet, it's never been a sort of complete swathe of opinion. Rafa Benitez famously was causing fights on the cop in terms of his future at the club and where people sort of perceived. And I think it got to a point where maybe arguably a majority of people thought maybe it's the end of Rafa's tenure. Kenny Dalglish the same. I mean, Roy Hodgson's obviously the sort of outlier in all this because everybody wanted him gone. And then Brendan Rodgers again. There's a lot of people who sort of say about after the Stoke game, they wanted Rodgers to be sacked. And I can remember sort of just really holding 2013-14 in my heart as one of those seasons, because it was like my first time. Well, I just started going to uni, so I was just able to bevy and that kind of thing. And so 13-14 was like a massive season for me. And even after the Stoke game and the sort of embarrassment of that and how Gerrard went out, how Sterling went out, I still wasn't sort of completely certain within myself whether I wanted Brendan Rodgers to go or not. And I think it would probably get to the same point with Jurgen if it ever did get there. Neil's right to say it depends how you start losing. But I think it would be generally a divide between, you know, the people who've sort of appreciated all the good years under Klopp and Rob Gutman.
Yeah, you mentioned Rafa Benitez in there, of course, went to Newcastle, and no one knows what he's doing nowadays. No idea. Robbo, you obviously are somebody that likes players to show character. That was a big debate, wasn't it, for a while between you and Neil? Are you, if it's 5 years, no trophy, are you saying where's the character of the players, or are you looking at the manager?
Well, I'd like to think that Jurgen's earned some time now to not win things, to be honest with you. And I take Neil's point that it was a complete disaster and we were crap and it looked like he wasn't arsed, then of course. But the reason I say he's earned something now is I like to think that the culture around the club's changed a little bit, and it should have done, because we've got the best manager in the world. And you know, we were talking the other day on the Jurgen Klopp special thing that we did, where I said I can remember a lot of Reds that I knew saying, well, and me included, if this man can't do it, who can? And what's the next move for Liverpool? So we've got the best man right now. So if he had a bit of a lean period, given what he's up against and the resources of other clubs and how difficult it is to win something in this country, never mind in Europe, I'd like to think that, you know, it takes a while for things to turn. Like you mentioned, Klopp and the crowds and things like that. Although I do react to it, I'd like to think that, you know, there's dickhead corners of the internet basically over everything, and someone wrote an excellent piece about that recently, about sort of these joyless people that even in the best of times are still griping and moaning. So there'll be gripes and moans if Jurgen started not winning things for a while, but I'd like to think that in the ground, on the cop, it would remain supportive, because he deserves that support for what he's done. He finally delivered the title that I thought I would never see in my lifetime. He's delivered us another European Cup. He's got us to a final. There's a season where we get 97 points, etc., etc., etc. So if it went a little bit off the rails, I'd want it to be a long, long time before we start turning on him. And it would be something like where I would be culturally questioning people if they were turning on him quickly. And, you know, we did all have a word with Rob, to be fair, over that.
Yeah. I think the internet had a word with Rob over that, let alone everybody else.
I left the WhatsApp group.
You did, yeah. You flounced.
There's no stronger protest in 2021.
Neil Atkinson has left the group.
No stronger voice than that.
Right, there's no name on this one. Now, this is not part of the question. There's just me speaking. My dog is 9 now, and Rachel assures me that he's never going to die. So this question, in a similar vein, is completely irrelevant. But the person has asked, with Klopp leaving in a few years, nope, and Edwards leaving also, how do you see or hope Liverpool's succession plans will go, and will we see a change in transfer policy? So Gareth, I'll go back to you.
How do I see it going? I mean, in terms of the manager, obviously it's going to be very, very difficult to replace someone like Klopp. I mean, it will be sort of Shankly-esque, but then Paisley did all right, didn't he? So I'd like it to sort of go back to a little bit of the traditions of Liverpool in terms of there being a succession plan. So I've been really impressed by Pep Linders. I think he's got something in him that could carry what Klopp's built into another period, but I'm not necessarily sure he's the number one man or whether he'd even want to be. I think he seems to me, what I see from the outside looking in, as a brilliant number 2. So keep him as a number 2, have him there. He's your cultural leader, if you like, at number 2. And then number 1, I'm sorry, but I still want Stevie to come. I want to see Steven Gerrard manage Liverpool, and that might be romantic and that might be daft, and you can tell me he's not got enough experience and he's only done it in Scotland and blah blah blah. But you know what, bollocks to it. I love romance in football. It's the best thing about football. Stevie's an Iton lad, blah 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 blah. You know all that. You know how much I love him. So to see him in the dugout, to see him taking people on, to see him bollocking journalists, arguing with other managers, appealing for stuff on the sidelines, be fucking brilliant, that, wouldn't it?
It would definitely be the dream, that, wouldn't it?
And in terms of transfers, well, if we could just back them to fucking let them buy loads of boss players so it works, that'd be great too.
Josh, I think Gareth touched on something there, which is Klopp has been making a silk purse out of a sow's ear, or whatever the expression is, a little bit in terms of what he's got to work with transfer wise. And yes, we can point to, we spent a record fee on Alisson and we spent a record fee on Virgil van Dijk, etc., etc. But at the same time, we know he's been operating under budget constraints. Is the way forward after this, do you think that either the owners have to change the way they work or they have to leave? Like, can a different manager work the miracles that Klopp has worked?
I think there's going to be sort of a general swathe going forward in football now of just these kind of owners that we've seen going into Newcastle, taking over football clubs, and it's a bit of a sad reality, really. I don't see a way in which that takes a backward step, because it keeps constantly sort of taking forward steps. And, you know, there's been sort of one sports washing state-owned ownership coming in every decade now since the 2000s with Chelsea, City and Newcastle. So I don't really see a way in which that changed. I don't see a way in which Liverpool eventually get those kind of owners, unless, you know, Liverpool fans rise up, which I imagine they will, to sort of go against that. I think there's an extent to which Klopp likes his role being the miracle worker. So I would wonder, if we were to get those kind of owners, would Klopp then sort of just go, I don't really fancy this as a thing anymore, because it then doesn't become football's Klopp. It doesn't become, you know, as Robbo says, romance and daft in the way that Klopp loves it to be, in the way that we all love it to be. I think at that point that would be when Klopp would say, I'm all right for this now. I can pack it in and go and sit on a beach in Ibiza with my family. In terms of the Michael Edwards thing, I think it's dead interesting, like the reaction has been to that, because there was once upon a time where Michael Edwards was part of a very dysfunctional transfer committee, in which, albeit he probably didn't have the greatest say, and that was the issue, was there was too many people with different opinions trying to have their say. But he's now just heading up a whole team of people who are in charge of Liverpool's transfers, and I don't believe for a second that he would leave Liverpool if he didn't think that there's a team enough there to carry on that sort of that legacy almost that he's set. But I believe he said it only because he's the face of it. So I think in terms of transfers going forward, the policy probably won't change while we've got these owners and while we've got this manager, and I believe that Pep Lijnders will be the next in charge, and I don't think things would change too much in that sense. It would be boot room-esque, as Robbo sort of hints at there, but you know, there is maybe a bit of a sort of side story in which we get a group of richer owners once FSG starts packing, and then maybe we get Steven Gerrard to play with all that money as well.
It's difficult, isn't it, John? Because there's nobody's bigger than Liverpool Football Club. That has always been the mantra. That's always been the way. But it does not feel like Jurgen Klopp might be. Like there is a big thing where he's just so it almost feels like he's Wenger at Arsenal integral to what Liverpool are doing at the moment, doesn't it? So what are you seeing as the future post Jurgen?
I think, look, I love Jurgen Klopp, but he also got Mo Salah for 35 million quid, and I think, and also he got Virgil van Dijk when everyone else wasn't sure, and Liverpool paid the money for him, and so it's undeniable that players have contributed to the success as much, I would say, as Jurgen Klopp. Look, and Jurgen Klopp's a brilliant manager. I think he's the best, but you know, he can't win the league with lads who aren't up to it. So I think it's a few things that matter. You've obviously got to have a top manager. Having someone like Jurgen was important when we've gone so long without winning it, to make everyone believe. You know, Jurgen, you wouldn't have nights like Barcelona and stuff without Jurgen. But in terms of actually, you know, now ongoing winning trophies, like, you know, I think it is possible without Jurgen, but it's not possible without investments and about smart signings, and the less you have to spend, the smarter you have to be. And unfortunately for Liverpool, you know, we're not the only ones who are clever or using data or stuff. And every now and again, someone jumps ahead, don't they? And I think Liverpool maybe did that a few years ago, but other people then catch up. Everyone's watching each other, and everyone's sort of observing each other, really. And so I think for Liverpool, it's as much about, you know, can we bank on doing another Mo Salah for 35 million quid, as much as can we bank on getting another year in Klopp, and that's going to be the challenge. And look, maybe that will be possible. Maybe, you know, there'll always be, you know, certain players who are maybe underrated by the general market that we can go in and say, no, do you know what, he's about to become a superstar, and we'll pay the money and we'll get him. And also, it's worth saying as well that Liverpool have kept these players because they've sorted them out contract-wise and stuff like that, and that's one of the differences in the past. It's not just that we've won stuff, which is right. You know, these, you know, we've got the second biggest wage bill in the country, and these lads have been weighed in. Do you know what I mean? And rightly so, because they've done it and they've earned the wages as much as anyone earns these mad wages. So I think there's other ways to looking at it. But I think for Liverpool, it's how do we stay at a level, not just with the manager, but with everything that's got us to this stage, really, and that's the recruitment. So, you mentioned Michael Edwards before. It's everything, really. Can we still go and get these great players? Can we still attract these great players? Can we still, if they perform to the level that we want, I'll be honest, I'm more worried about Mo Salah going next summer than I am Jurgen Klopp in 3 years. Do you know what I mean? And that's just maybe it's just sooner. Yeah. I don't know, but the idea that we'll just go and get another one, it doesn't necessarily work out like that. So I think for me, it's about just making sure that we're trying to be the best in everything that we do, making sure we're trying to recruit the best, on and off the pitch, and just keeping that ambition. But I also think if FSG, and this is just my opinion, and people might disagree in the room, but I personally think if FSG ever start to feel like they can't win, they'll go and do something else.
Neil, a lot of what John said there's totally fair, but players don't necessarily sign to play for Pep Linders. Like Brendan Rodgers had Steven Gerrard sending carrier pigeons and stuff to try and persuade lads to play for us, didn't he? So, losing the man that brings in the players is problematic, isn't it?
It is, but we're a super club, and we need to remember that. One of the problems, one of the reasons why at times Liverpool supporters don't feel like we're a super club is because there's 3 other super clubs, one of which has got unbelievable commercial power, one of which has got a rich, indulgent owner who was very smart between 2008 and 2012 in terms of creating this bank of players, and he tops it up every 3 or 4 years in Abramovich, and the other one is Man City, who are backed by Abu Dhabi. And now we're concerned that at some point Newcastle may well be able to push themselves into those ranks. But we are a super club. We will end this year paying the top 5 wages in the world in terms of a football club. Top 5 wages in the world. So we should expect top 5 wages in the world results from the players who are given top 5 wages to. And within all of that, we've got to punch our weight and not be scared of the world, basically. And at times, the one thing that does drive me mad about Liverpool discourse is I think we can be a bit of a gang of shithouses. There's a bit of cowardice that goes on. It's a super club, and remembering that it's one of the top 5 most loved football teams in the world, along with Manchester United, with Barcelona, with Real Madrid, and possibly with Bayern Munich. That's where we are, and that's where we live. And on top of that, we've got the revenues to back that up. We just have to make slightly smarter decisions because we can't top it up with huge amounts of owner money. But ultimately, you want to talk about who Liverpool's next manager could be. There's loads of ways, loads of routes where it's Guardiola or Pochettino. I'm not saying I want it to be either, but there's loads of routes it could be either of those two. Not Pep Linders, not Steven Gerrard. If Liverpool's job came up right now, Pochettino would be really interested. Like, how do I get that? And the reason why is because I want to win the European Cup, and I can win the European Cup with them because of all this other stuff they've got going on. We shouldn't be apologetic about this, and we shouldn't be spineless about it either. This is where we've wanted to be, and it's where we are. And I think that's a difficult leap to take because in loads of ways, not least because of the way money operates in football, we want to see ourselves as the underdogs. We want to see ourselves as plucky. We're not plucky, we're fucking bullies. That's what Liverpool are, we're bullies in this league. We do, as John said before, the gap between the 4th and 5th highest wage bills is... So Arsenal paid about 100 million more than us in transfers last summer, but we pay 100 million more a year in wages than Arsenal do. It's probably more than that now in wages than Arsenal do. We're bullies against Arsenal. We've already got these players and we reward them. So we shouldn't be, there's always going to be work to do. The big question, really in a really weird way for Liverpool, if you want to go huge on this, it isn't how you replace Klopp, and it isn't even how you replace Edwards. It's how you make up the gap in year on year absolutely impervious commercial revenue that Man United get that we don't get. If you want to be really cynical and drill into, that's the big question for Liverpool to answer. The sporting stuff they've boxed. United seemingly can be as crap as you want and will still make 80, 90, 100 million more a year than everyone but including Liverpool, on commercial income than we do. So we do brilliantly out of television. We're doing better out of the ground. There's loads and loads of bits around that. But the big gap is United, because all the things we've laughed at them about in different ways for 30 years, they've been doing and laying the groundwork for. So when you say, oh, here's Man United's noodle partner, that noodle partner's paying $3 million a year, and 60 of them add up over a period of time. All that nonsense adds up. And that's what United have had, and that's, I think, one of the reasons why Liverpool have ended up making Billy Hogan managing director. But all of this is ultimately CEO, sorry, not managing director. All of this is, that's the key thing. If we manage to get to United's levels of commercial income, then we'd be, broadly speaking, as bulletproof as United. And then we are in that realm of, you can afford to get it wrong, you can afford to hire Van Gaal and it fails. You can afford to buy Angel Di Maria and it goes to shit. If you can make yourself bulletproof, that's the next move for Liverpool. And we're that far away from it, and we shouldn't be shy about that fact. We're that far away from it, and that's because of the great work by Jurgen Klopp, by Michael Edwards, by the players, by everyone who we're mentioning. But we're that far away from it, and it isn't the fun bit of footy. It's the bit we need to push home on, though.
I think that's really fair, and actually, you forget, I think, how many good managers there are out there that probably would be interested in the job and that we could bring in.
Nagelsmann would do it. He wouldn't do it right now, but in 3 years when Klopp goes, and Nagelsmann's not tainted by anything, Nagelsmann would take it. They'd all take it because of what Klopp's shown them, which is the power of Anfield, what John was talking about before. The power of all of this, they would all take it. If Guardiola goes and does an international job, doesn't like it very much, and in 3 years' time Klopp leaves, he'd be and he's not won a European Cup at City, he'd be desperate to manage Liverpool.
I think you've picked two people there that definitely need to sort the clobber out, though, if they want to get the Liverpool job. Right, I quite like this one. I mean, there's three questions and there's no name, so I apologise. I'm just taking credit for all questions now. But and I'm going with the bottom one, which is Steven Gerrard for Newcastle? ? I'm going to give you a moment to stew on it, Robbo. So we'll go to Josh.
I can't see a way in which that is the case, to be honest. I think when, Gareth mentioned before about he doesn't care about the things that Steven Gerrard's done so far. To be honest, I expected Steven Gerrard to be a little bit further ahead in his managerial career than he is now. In terms of, I expected him to have done a bit more with Rangers in terms of progress in Europe. It's hard to say that, given they've just won their first SPL title in however many years and that kind of thing. So Rangers fans will be absolutely made up with him. But in terms of the way the timeline worked in my head, I sort of thought that Steven Gerrard would already have a job in England, a Premier League job, to be honest. So I don't see a way in which Newcastle's owners look at the sort of the reputation of managers that are around in world football at the moment and go, Steven Gerrard is the one that we want. I think it's going to be someone who has already gone to many clubs and won things, and someone who, in their head at least, will guarantee them more success.
It's a fair point, Neil, isn't it, that Newcastle right now are going to be probably dreaming the big dream. Obviously, my dream is that Rafa leaves Everton and then Newcastle get relegated anyway, because that would just be really funny. But what do you think Gerrard would be on their radar?
I think he might be, in that he's a young up and coming manager, and they've got a couple of decisions to make quite quickly. I'd be surprised if they went for that, because what they could possibly do with is someone who knows how a football club should work. So that's why I think Benitez is an interesting shout. That's part of why he's at Everton. It's why supposedly Abramovich really liked him at Chelsea, is because he gets in and he'll clear house and he'll sort stuff out and he'll get your procedures in order and everything where it needs to be, and he'll be part of that process, which sounds really boring, but obviously matters a lot, and we've benefited from having people who know what their jobs are and doing them properly. And I think for Gerrard, I think he would suit inspirational leader a little bit more than, the idea of stepping into those shoes. So I think they might look at Gerrard but decide against it. I think Steven should go to Germany. He should go and manage Bayer Leverkusen or something, where there's the opportunity to play Bayern Munich and Dortmund a couple of times a year. There's the opportunity to come top four. There's then the opportunity to have a Champions League run. There's the opportunity to possibly one year push Munich really close, if not win the thing, if you're really good at what you do. I think he should look at going and doing that, because it's a step up from Rangers in terms of the calibre of footballer. It's a weird sort of step down in terms of the calibre of expectation, but I think it's the sort of thing a manager can do to really build a reputation for being really good. Just dead quick on Gerrard, I don't think you can underplay how much he tightened that Rangers team up. They barely conceded a goal. at times. And you don't do that by accident. You don't do that with bad coaching. He's clearly got real ability at what he does. But I think maybe if we want to follow the Robbo path from the previous question, I think one more job somewhere that wasn't Rangers, but maybe wasn't in England, where he gets to be at the very highest level at times, would be no bad thing. So somewhere like Leverkusen would be a good shout.
You say he's done a really good job, but Josh is fuming that he hasn't won the Champions League already. So, you know.
I don't know what Sexton expects, to be honest with you. But, you know, he's wearing a very brave orange hoodie.
John, you are in charge of Newcastle. We're going to forgive you the human rights issues and stuff at the moment. What's your managerial decision?
I probably won't go for Gerrard in that. I think they need a big managerial name who's going to attract a certain level of player, and I think it's all well and good having all this money, but I think players, you know, do look at well who's the manager really, and who's the main fella. And I think, you know, if you look at the City model, you know, it does change, you know, the kind of player they can attract once they've got bigger name managers in, rather than say Mark Hughes, who they sort of started with. So I don't think they'll go for Gerrard. I think they'll go for an Ancelotti or someone like that. Obviously, he's at Real Madrid now, but someone who will be a bit of a hired gun. You know, you pay me £10 million a year, you get me type thing, and someone who's able to do what he did at Everton, which is, you know, to get James Rodriguez and Allen and players like that who wouldn't have gone to Everton sort of without him here. I think that's how Newcastle go. I also think it's a wrong move for Gerrard, to be honest with you, in that I think whoever the next Newcastle manager is, they eventually get sacked. And I don't think getting sacked by Newcastle gets you the Liverpool job. And if he wants the Liverpool job, which he clearly does, being sacked by Newcastle doesn't, you know, help at all. In fact, it probably stops that sort of happening, certainly in the sort of short to medium term. So I think it'd be a bad move for both, I think. But then if he got offered it, I can imagine why he'd be tempted.
Gareth, I've left you stewing there, thinking about it. And not only that, but you've had to listen to these three say Gerrard's shite. So what?
I never said that. I think it's brilliant. I just think whoever the next manager is, he gets sacked.
What's your... well, it was just a joke, John. What's your... what's your take?
I just want to be clear with the room.
What's your take on Gerrard to Newcastle?
I think Gerrard constantly is almost limbo dancing around the fact that the only reason he's doing any of this is to manage Liverpool. He doesn't need he doesn't need the money. You know what I mean? He doesn't need the pressure. He doesn't need any of it. He just wants to manage Liverpool. And I think he did an interview with Carragher, which I think was the most revealing, where he pretty much said that in not so many words. And you know, he doesn't want to undermine Klopp. Obviously, he doesn't want to sort of tread on any toes at Liverpool, but he wants that job. And so I'd agree with what John said, that it would be, you know, even if he was off, I can see why they'd offer him it, because it would be statements and like, look, you know, we take the piss out of them, don't we? But they are a passionate fan base, and I can see him, you know, pumping them up and getting them going, sort of Kevin Keegan-esque, if you like. But I just think it'd be the wrong move for him, as John said. I don't think that gets him the Liverpool job. I don't think it's a stepping stone towards getting the Liverpool job, because it's a bit of a poison chalice. And he wants to drink from one of them. So I think he'll bide his time, and he'll wait, and he'll look for something that is a better pathway towards Liverpool that isn't that.
We've all seen Indiana Jones.
Honestly.
I'll be honest, I didn't hear the end.
Poison chalice. Nah, you're all right, to be honest with you. Not for me tonight. Maybe tomorrow.
I didn't hear the end of his answer, because I was thinking, good explanation of poison chalice. Perfect. Succinct. Right. A relatively quick question for this one. This is also unnamed, so basically from now on I'll only say it if it's named. Just assume it's unnamed.
We never ask people to name them.
No, I'm not slagging them off. I'm just, just saying. If they've heard the show before, I say the name, because I can't pronounce names every now and again. So, but this one says, which current Liverpool player would you want as your flatmate? Which current Liverpool player, Neil, you...
Obviously Jordan Henderson. I mean, Jordan Henderson is the correct answer in lots and lots of ways. Jordan Henderson would do more than his fair share of all of the housework. He'd be boxing all sorts off. He's got a great Ocado delivery game. Books it weeks in advance. He's nailing it, Jordan, all day, every day. So yeah, I mean, for me, obviously there is only one man it could be, and we could have lovely chats about Sunderland.
I absolutely could not be arsed with him shouting at me while I was hoovering.
Great work, Adam.
I couldn't be doing with it.
Get the corners.
I'm like, Jordan, mate, come on. I've only just turned it on. Stop shouting at me. John?
Bobby Firmino for me. Adam, if I'm going into a flat chair, I'm doing it properly. Do you know what I mean? And that's to enjoy myself and enjoy life. So the very idea of a flat chair is obviously a regression. So if I'm going to do that, I'm going to go full midlife crisis, please, Adam. And Bobby Firmino, Lucas Leiva promised me when I interviewed Lucas Leiva Lucas said if you go to Firmino's house, there's always something else. You never just go for tea, then there's something else. And suddenly there's entertainers there, and suddenly there's stuff there, and suddenly there's karaoke. So yeah, me and Bobby living the high life.
You'll have your top off in no time, won't you? Just swing it around your head. Yeah. Josh, who are you having as your flatmate? I'm taking James Milner because I reckon he's brilliant at the DIY. He just boxes everything.
I can't believe how functional yours and Neil's flat shares are. Have you ever shared a flat, you two? Those things are not supposed to be functional at all. I'm sort of along the lines of John in that I'd go for vibes, and I'm someone who loves to force a joke. And I think there's only one other player in the Liverpool squad who forces jokes as much as me, and that's Andy Robertson. So I think if me and Andy Robertson were in a flat together, we'd just be ribbing each other non-stop. And I'm sort of into that idea that me and him, and we're also getting on the ale, occasionally, but mainly just ripping each other constantly.
Well done to Andy Robertson's family who joined us. That's very good. Gareth?
I can't believe no one said Virgil van Dijk. It's Virgil van Dijk. I mean, he's the coolest fella alive. I think if you're coming home from work and you'd had a bad day and Virgil sat there, he's just sorting it because he fucking sorts everything. I mean, we were fortunate enough to interview him, and we were a bit like, fucking hell, is Virgil van Dijk? And he's going, oh yeah, lads, you're here to interview me. And we go, oh yeah, forgot about that bit. And he's as cool as you think he is, you know what I mean? So I just think, like, he'd sort anything. And if you wanted access to any of the other players for any reasons, like you wanted to go to one of Bobby's parties, or you wanted Milner to do some DIY or a bit of personal training or whatever it might be, I mean, he'd just fucking tell them to do it, and they'd do it, wouldn't he? We get to know what fucking aftershave he wears. He wouldn't tell me.
Yeah. Can you be asked being the funny one, though?
I'm not sure I could take his disappointment when I haven't done the dishes. Do you know what I mean? Just that look in his eye. Well, probably not, no, because I'm quite a lazy person. So I'd not only not have done the dishes, but I'd also have really disappointed him. So it's too much for me, that. Okay, right. Let's go to... Oh, this is a good one. This is from Dan. If you could go back in time and give any player an injury-free career, who would it be? So one player that's getting an injury-free career.
John Barnes. Because you could. I mean, I don't want to knock other people's potential answers out. There's two for me, because one of the things you're looking for is the idea that they'd stay for the rest of the career at Liverpool. And I've got two in mind, and the one I go for, just to see precisely what it turns into, would be John Barnes. So the idea that even though he does really well when he goes back into midfield, Barnes, he never has to. He does, but like really late, like 37. Like that's the time he has to go back to centre mid because he's just been that good for that long, and he hangs on in there. But Barnes would have been absolutely incredible, and would have just he was getting better. 88 into 89, 89 into 90, and 90 into 91. Barnes, he was getting better, and then it hits, and his ability to really move is done. But he may well have been one of the first sort of players viewed as a wide player to like hit 30, 35 goals in European football, because he was just going that way year on year.
Josh, John Barnes was a player in the 80s and 90s. He was quite good.
He's better than Sadio, lad.
Are there any players that you would like to have given an injury-free career to?
Virgil van Dijk.
He's living with Robbo. So.
Exactly, they're just having a nice, easy life. Him and Robbo on the red wine occasionally. Robbo gave Virgil a lovely life in a flat share, I think. I'd be tempted to say Virgil van Dijk just because I think Neil mentioned last season that it's not necessarily the Virgil van Dijk injury that kills Liverpool's season, it's probably actually the Joel Matip one against West Brom, and then the subsequent one against Tottenham as well. There's the Joe Gomez injury on England duty as well. But I think if Virgil van Dijk doesn't get injured that season, Klopp probably feels more comfortable playing some of the younger lads a little bit earlier, and it gives you the option to play a few of the lads who were in midfield and get moved centre back to still stay in midfield. And then you can almost wonder with hindsight where Liverpool's season goes from there. So I think I'll stick with Virgil van Dijk, and then obviously that gives us however much longer he's got left at Liverpool injury free.
Nice. John, have you got a more interesting answer?
Well, the hipster answer is Jim Beglin. If anyone in the crowd, yeah, a few nods from my fellow hipsters in the crowd. Hipster answer is Jim Beglin, but me actual answer is Robbie Fowler.
Yeah,
I had two strikers in mind, but I took Neil's points on who's likely to stay, and I think Fowler would have done his whole career at Liverpool.
And the other one wouldn't have.
No, when he fucking left anyway. And so I think Fowler, without those injuries, who knows how many goals he would have scored, would have been absolutely incredible. So God for me, please. God with no injuries.
Robbo, you're, for such a good-looking man, you're surprisingly old. What's your sort of take on a player to go injury-free?
Go either way, that couldn't it, Robbo? Felt.
Mine's Rob Jones because he was fucking brilliant.
Told you.
But unfortunately had to retire by 28, I think it was. Met Rob, interviewed Rob, really lovely lad. Struggled a little bit afterwards with having to fucking retire at 28 and that, as you would. But I don't know if, some people in the room might not have seen him play, but he was destined to be, basically the best right back we've ever had, really, and he would eventually have scored a goal as well. I mean, everyone was putting money on him every game to score, and he never scored, did he? And he would have. But also, the other thing I was thinking about this is it would have meant that maybe we don't have to deal with Gary Neville now, because Gary Neville's basically famous because he ends up being England's right back and all the rest of it. He wouldn't have got a sniff if Rob Jones was fit and firing and playing. We wouldn't have seen Gary get an England cap. I'm absolutely fucking convinced of it, because Rob Jones was that good. So let's give an injury-free career to Rob Jones.
And Peter Lim's various business interests might have been more successful in football if he'd have worked with Rob Jones.
That's way over my head, and I imagine Josh's.
No, I get it.
Yeah. It's Salford FC chat.
Yeah. Sure. Right, okay. Right, I'm there now. Right, Frank Donnelly has asked a question that I'm going to put into the wishful thinking bracket. But he said, if Mo Salah isn't offered a new contract, is that because LFC are lining Mbappe up for next season? That's the question. So I suppose to give it more room to breathe, I'm going to say, do you think Mbappe would be a good Salah replacement if Salah's contract doesn't get renewed? Robbo, go back to you.
It's all a bit FIFA, that, isn't it? I mean, he's not fucking signing for Liverpool. I don't think I'm based in anyone's bubble. I mean, I see people talking about it. I see people, going on about it all the time on the internet, and I just think, oh, fuck off, internet. He's not coming to Liverpool, because Liverpool under this ownership just don't do things like that, and it would massively step out of their bubble to suddenly do it out of the blue. And I know there's theories about how Nike would step in and do X and Y, and obviously he's on a free and blah 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 blah, but I just don't see it. I just don't see it at all. And instead, let's stop fucking round and get Mo signed up, because he's here and he's brilliant, and he can be brilliant for 5 more years.
I like that when I said you were old, there was a bit of disdain in your look at me, and then you've just said, fuck off internet, like an old man shouting at the clouds, basically.
It was fucking well better when we never had
it. Josh?
The mad thing is about the Mbappe signing, particularly if it's a replacement for Salah, is that it's actually really sensible in a way. Like one of the big things that I've been advocating for on podcasts, I know Neil's been advocating for on podcasts as well, is for Liverpool's squad to just sort of get a bit younger and have that sort of succession planning there in the squad. And I think Mbappe is the sort of player that if you signed him, I don't believe he's actually on Mo Salah's level. I think Mo Salah's a better player than Kylian Mbappe, but Kylian Mbappe has that room to grow because he's still a sort of young lad. So in terms of that sense of, if we're moving on from this old guard, if you want to call it that, of a Liverpool squad now, which it isn't, but if we're moving on from the core that it's been for so many years now, then who better to go for than an already bona fide world star who can be at Liverpool for sort of 10 more years to come?
John, Gareth's obviously already burst the bubble on this question, but
just my
if Salah's not getting his contract, do you think there's anything in FSG where they're sort of going, well, listen, we can't give Salah a new contract because?
No, I don't think the two are necessarily connected. I think the thing seems to be with Salah is they're unsure whether they want to give him this big money because A, it's a lot of money, but also B, what it does for squad harmony and stuff like that. So I don't see how they decline to give Salah the money. I think Salah's better than Mbappe, by the way. I take the age point that Josh has made, but right now I think he's a better footballer. So it seems I don't see how they decline to give Mo Salah what he wants, which is, we are led to believe, somewhere between 300 and 400 grand a week, and then give and then give Mbappe what would have to be that, if not more. I don't see that personally to ask the sort of original question, really, because, as I say, it seems to be as much around, squad harmony and keeping everyone sort of, that bit of togetherness as much as, well, can we physically afford it? Because they can physically afford it, but what it seems that they don't want is this Real Madrid Galacticos thing where you've got, certain people on 300 grand a week and then other people sharing the same dressing room on 30. So I think it's hard and I think it's difficult, and it's the price of success in a way, really, is that, well, actually, this is what we wanted, but with it, it costs money to sort of keep these lads, and this is the first big test, and I hope they sort it out. I think Mo Salah could earn more money elsewhere, but still wants to sign for Liverpool, but how much are you willing to sort of, bridge that, really? And Liverpool, we'll probably have to end up paying them a little bit more than what they'd like to, but how much more are they willing to go? And I think that's the standoff at the moment, really. They both accept that there needs to be a bit of give and take, but Salah seems to me to be given a little bit more than what Liverpool are at the moment, and I hope that changes.
I think there's a stars aligning thing around Mbappe where they just haven't. I think he's one that's got away for Liverpool. They've been talking to his family for years, like when he was coming through at Monaco. They wanted him, they knew what he was, and I actually think that had they managed to pull it off earlier, Mbappe would be a better footballer for it. At this point, if he'd have got to play week in, week out at the level that Liverpool are doing the business at. Jordan's clicked John there, which I'm so happy about. There is, for me, that's, and it's possible that the stars continue to not align around it. There's a universe where if Madrid don't get Champions League, I don't quite know what Mbappe does now. I think they probably will get the Champions League. They should get the Champions League, but it's possible because at the minute Spain's mad. There's other things as well where it wouldn't surprise me if Liverpool become really, really attractive to Mbappe in a sort of I can realise my ambitions their way. The thing I'd say about Salah is if he leaves Liverpool, Salah will not win any of the next 3 Ballon d'Ors. If Salah stays at Liverpool, he could win all 3 of the next Ballon d'Ors, and that will be a big deal for Salah for his own sort of personal wants and needs. Now, that involves Liverpool winning trophies through those periods, which is absolutely fantastic. But at the minute, Liverpool is built around what Mo Salah does, and I think Mo Salah and his representatives will know that in a way that if he goes to Paris Saint-Germain, or there's probably nowhere else he can go, to be frank, if he doesn't go to Paris Saint-Germain. Maybe Real Madrid. He can't go to Barcelona, couldn't climb it for the next 3 years. And if Real sign Mbappe, then he can't go there. So you end up going in a situation. It's a really weird contract negotiation, the Salah one, when you stop to think about it, because Liverpool are well within the rights to sort of be a bit like, the fuck are you going to go? And Salah's well within his rights to go, what the fuck are you going to do without me? Like, there's a really weird thing going on where it isn't a clear pathway for anyone, while simultaneously wanting to end up in a situation where Salah gets 400 grand a week. And that's difficult, to say the least. So I think it will resolve itself, and it'll resolve itself the way we want, in that I think common sense will prevail. Salah will become Liverpool's highest paid player by 100 grand, and we get him for the next 5 years. I do think that'll happen. But I think it's trickier in loads of ways than you think. Because he's going to go and play for Bayern Munich. I don't think he's going to go and play for another English side. He's not going to go back to Chelsea. So his only move then is to either Manchester club. That doesn't seem quite right or viable, even on a free. Then he's not going to go to Madrid if Mbappe's gone there. He can't go to Barcelona. So then it becomes Paris Saint-Germain again. But then Paris Saint-Germain have got Messi. So all of this just repeatedly loops itself around. And then some bell end for TalkSport will say Newcastle or something. But the idea that Salah wants to spend 2 years turning Newcastle into a Champions League club when he could be winning the Champions League instead doesn't seem quite right. So I think it's all really, I think it's weirder than we sort of think at times. If you stop to go, well, where does he actually go if he doesn't play for us? Whilst also saying the way we play is completely built around getting the best out of him. It'll all get sorted out. It's got to, because if not, it's lots of humans behaving irrationally.
And no one's ever heard of that before. So I think we've got time for 2 more questions. I was flipping through in the hope that there'd be one in here from Robbie Fowler, the gobshite, not the footballer, because I know he's here, but there isn't one, which is a shame. So we'll start with, has international football ever felt special or important to you? Has international football ever felt special or important? So, Neil, we'll go back to you.
Yeah, I watched Scotland-Israel just literally 2 days ago. And I was watching it with some Scottish members of my family, and they loved it, and we got right into it, and it was sound. Is that special or important? That's up in the air. I burst into tears when Christensen walloped it in against the Russians for Denmark in the Euros because of everything that had gone on with Atkinson. Like, I literally cried when he walloped it in. Because, you know, to see Copenhagen in that context go berserk like that off the back of a 35-yard thunderbolt. I'm absolutely fine with international football existing and it being really important to a lot of people. I'm not absolutely fine with the fact that international football has seemingly decided to have a lot of mission creep. Do you know what I mean? Like, international football's decided it's got to get bigger year on year on year, whether it's UEFA or FIFA, and this is part of the problem where we live in a world where everyone's the baddies. But international football, it can be really important to people. There's 2 instances where, without being an active sort of desirous participant in either way, shape or form, it's felt important. It felt vital when Owen runs through against Argentina because he was basically like your big brother at that point, you know, and he was a Liverpool person. So it can have its moments in the way, you know, all things do. The problem at the minute with international football is it's decided it's just got to continually grow and spread out like a fungus that's determined to kill the thing it hosts, or host the thing it kills. I'm not quite sure. One or the other. I don't understand fungus, Adam, if I'm honest with you. If I was more knowledgeable around fungi, this metaphor would work. As it is, we've all just got to have to make the best of it and move on.
Instead of a working metaphor, you've just sent us all into an existential crisis. So that's nice. John, you, international football, what's the deal?
Yeah, Italian 90, I remember being absolutely gutted when England went out. I remember like taking my England shirt off and just sort of looking at it on the bed and all that, and having a real like I don't know, like
what of this, mate?
Honestly, it was like the canvas were on me. Honestly, the way I was staring at it after it disrobed. And then Euro 96, sort of less bothered, just sort of enjoyed the fact that it was there. But then that was less bothered about England, but it was into it. I went to a couple of games and it was just sort of fun. France 98, I remember being gutted when England went out. And the Beckham thing and stuff, and yeah, I think I've sort of, it's funny, isn't it, with England, I've more drifted away than had this big moment where I'm like, oh, that's it, you know what I mean? It's more like I've just got less and less interested over the years, to whereas now I can't tell you how they got on this week. Genuinely can't tell you the results.
I'm always surprised that they play. Why has no one told me?
Even though you're watching Scotland Israel, you're surprised that England are playing. Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, I can't tell you. I think the final straw for me was when Gomez got booed on, and I was like, just fuck this. I'm not even engaging with it. I'm not even like pretending that I'm bothered or even, you know, this is not worthy of any of my attention, but even negative or positive when Gomez got booed on. So, and seemingly I've fucking nailed it, to be honest with you, because I don't know any scores this week. But it matters a lot to a lot of people who aren't us, and that's the thing. Well, it probably matters to people in the audience, but generally speaking, like, you know, we're club above country, I think, as a fan base. But for other people, you know, I did see Sadio dancing in front of the crowd and stuff, and tweeted that from the Wrap account, and that was nice. So I don't, you know, the people who say, "Oh, just make them all retire from international football," like, it's just not going to happen. Like, the players love it, and if you say you can't play for your country, like, a lot of them will go somewhere else, and so we need to accept that. And we need to accept that it's here to stay. But Neil nailed it until he got weird over fungus. That it's just greed, and it's growing to the fact that it was 2 games, which felt like a lot, and now it's 3. Like, how did they sneak that in? How did they sneak the 3rd game in? Like, whose job was that? And I'm looking at you as the audience. Like, which one of you let that through? He was on the shift where 3 games suddenly got in. Like, someone was. Probably not anyone here on reflection, but yeah, they need to, but everyone needs to stop taking the piss, don't they? And that was Neil's other point, is that, everyone just needs to look after football. It's full court, so I was brilliant. Played it for the 3rd and 4th place playoff and slaughtered it afterwards. Yeah. Fair play to him. More of that.
I like that you said until Neil got weird about fungus, but you'd casually slip the word disrobed into what you were saying. Like we all weren't supposed to react to that one.
I'm going to wait till till we stop recording.
Josh, I know I keep making jokes about your age. It's because I'm jealous. But it feels to me like when I was younger, it was a little bit like, not cooler to be into international football, but it feels less cool now. And that might just be because I'm old and cynical. But have you ever really cared about England? Obviously, you're a Wool, so that's a bit different as well. So,
yeah, being a Wool, it's been a sort of a big part of
brass neck on Adam there, by the way, Josh. I'm surprised you've let it go.
No, I'm all right. I'm the king of the Wolves. I'll tell everyone this. Yeah, as I was younger, I really was into it. And there's actually a sort of interesting point in my life where I was basically struggling to get into footy, and my dad, bless him, was trying really, really hard to make me be more into footy, as my brothers were at the time. One of my brothers was basically just a David Beckham fan, so wouldn't support Liverpool because David Beckham didn't play for them, but then my dad wouldn't let him support United, so there's just this impasse where he's like, well, I'm just gonna support everything David Beckham does. And then my other brother was a mad Liverpool fan, like absolutely massive, loved everything about Liverpool, had all the kits, all the VHSs and all that kind of thing. That's how old I am, by the way. VHSs were a thing. And I sort of met them somewhere in the middle. I was like, well, I love David Beckham because Tom loves him, and I love Michael Owen because he plays for Liverpool and he's also cool. So I just sort of met like this like weird thing, and I was like, well, both of them play for England, so I can support England. I think as I grew older and grew more cynical, I just felt less patriotic about it. But John and Neil are right to point out that it's for me, international football is not necessarily about me and my support for England. I don't really care about England when I watch them. I don't care if they win or lose. I'm not one of the people who actually wants them to lose, although I understand if you do. I don't mind it if they win. I've been around friends who support England. I was at Wireless Festival in 2018 when Harry Maguire scored against Sweden, and I have to say it absolutely went off. And no one was throwing beer either, because it was a festival where beers cost a lot of money. So it's fair to say everyone was savouring it. But equally, I joined the Anfield Wrap in 2016, around the time we were doing a lot of shows in the Radio City Tower, and basically every Friday we were going up to the Radio City Tower during that summer to speak to the wee man over in Lyon, following Northern Ireland, and like I didn't know Craig at the time, but just hearing
happier times.
But just hearing, I'm just friends with all his friends now instead. Just hearing how sort of passionate Craig was about it, and hearing how much it meant to him to be from this sort of small country, and for him to be out there with so many people that he knows, and that must have been such a sort of special experience. So in that sense, I suppose I'm quite jealous that I don't like international football, but there's not a chance in hell I could be patriotic about this country, really. So it would be very hard for me to sort of swing that background. But for the wee man Craig, I can love international football, and I love Euro 2016 in the same sense, because I've got family from Wales, and that was also a special time for Wales.
You were alive when VHS was used, but I bet you weren't when the remote was still attached by a cord. That meant you had to sit about a foot away and was a waste of everyone's time.
I've had to re-spool VHS, but I've never done that.
Gareth, you're obviously famously from the Aintree area. It's being liking international football's in the modern era never really been a thing that Liverpool fans do particularly, but it wasn't always that way, was it? Was it that way for you ever?
I think it's just been about like moments and people for me with England. So some of them have already been mentioned. So the Michael Owen goal against Argentina. I remember I was watching that in the living room of the girlfriend at the time's parents, and obviously you don't swear in front of them, but I managed to do that when that went in, and they weren't impressed, it was fair to say. And look, I like Bobby Robson, I like Chris Waddle, I like Gaza. I got into the 1990 World Cup And there've been other moments like that, mainly around like mates, bevies, and it's a reason to go out. But I've never, one thing that has been consistent is I've never ever had the desire to go to an England match, and I still haven't now, because it does seem to be surrounded by a lot of bellends who sing about world wars and IRA and things like that, and that's just not for me. You know, and obviously there's the treatment of John Barnes. There's been weird treatments of some of our players by some of the managers as well. Like, don't quite understand, you know, why Robbie Fowler didn't get more caps. I don't quite understand why Steve McManaman didn't get more credit for his England career. You know, Gerrard, you know, he's got over 100 caps, and yet, you know, half the country seemed to boo him everywhere he went around the country. So all of that really puts me off it, to be honest. It's not for me. And there's a little bit of what Josh says in me, in that, you know, I look at other countries. There's a couple of lads I've got to know through the Wrap, Scottish lads, and they seem to really enjoy, you know, supporting their country, and it looks a laugh and it seems sound, and I kind of think, well, I've actually got some Scottish heritage, might get on board. But, you know, and I've been to a Northern Ireland match with Craig, and, you know, it was a laugh, and I just don't fancy England matches at all. I just couldn't bring myself to ever go to one. It's not for me. I think there's loads of reasons why, and look, none of us have even mentioned, like, the politics and the way the rest of England seems to think we're all cunts here. So there's that as well.
Yeah. Just dead fast, a couple of things. We went to Craig's wedding, and his dad talked about going over with him in the Euros in 2016 later on, and it was genuinely touching, like genuinely really, really moving, that he went over, and the experience he had and the friends that he made with Craig's friends. And that was like really, really sweet. In a way that you can get lost in a tiny bit. The other thing as well is what you saw, I thought, in Euro 2021, let's give it its proper name, with England, where up until and including the semi-final, it appeared to have different types of supporters in the ground to a significant extent. And then everything you see around the final, it's like a counter-revolution. It's like a gang of, well, it is lads, let's be frank about this. A gang of men across the country went, no, you can fuck off, this is our thing and this is how we do it, and we do it our way. And that's what they went and did on the biggest stage imaginable, was to go, no, fuck off, get out of our way. This is our thing, and we deserve to be in that ground, and we're going to do everything it takes. And I think that's a reminder that, you know, however good that was, because it was really weird in the way they did the tickets for Euro 2021 and all of that, however good all of that is, there will always be, I think, around England, this really weird, quite unpleasant hardcore, and it can be defeated, and it gets defeated in a lot of ways. It gets defeated in lots of good ways, and it's an ongoing battle that's being fought, even in very small ways, even up to and including, ladies and gentlemen, you being here tonight. But there is a thing that's ongoing there, which I think will take a lot of time to eradicate. So I couldn't agree more with what Gareth says.
I remember I was at drama school for Euro 2006, and I remember being in the pub, and everyone, there were fans of all different clubs and everything, and everyone was singing Steven Gerrard's name. And then when England got knocked out, they were all saying, fucking Gerrard, and I was like, what's just happened there? Like, that was quick. That was a fast turnaround. and it was the first time I properly remember being like, yeah, I'm not really about that. But I also remember during the match thinking, I can't really sing Wayne Rooney's name because I fucking hate him. I like it, you know, that sort of thing. It's like nowadays, like,
and England's big on the Whittle as well, isn't it?
It's a massive, mate, absolutely massive. I mean, my dad was driving around with little England flags in his car, so I can't even say anything. But it's even nowadays, it's the same sort of thing. Like, you know, like Harry Kane, I don't like him. I fucking hate the fella. He might be a good footballer. I think he's a prick. So I find it really difficult just because he's wearing an England top to be like, oh, I'm going to get right behind him. It is one of those things, isn't it? Right, I think we've got time for one more question. I think it's Marley. Apologies if I pronounced that incorrectly. If you had to go to a non-league game with any one of the players, who would it be and why? And I'm saying it's not allowed to be the player you're living with. Right, so you go into a non-league game. I don't know why Marley's picked a non-league game. I don't know. Maybe he just wants to support the lower leagues. But you go into a non-league game. You take we're not playing. They haven't got international duty. You're taking one of the players. Who are you taking? Why are you taking them? Gareth, you look ready to answer.
Well, I'm a big fan of non-league, and I've talked about that a lot on the Wrap over the years. So Preki Cables, Marine, various other ones, Knowsley United, who are no more, but were great. I'd go with Andy Robbo, because I think he'd love it, and I think he'd get into it, and I like going to non-league with people who get into it. What I mean by that is you're obviously a lot closer to the players. you can give them some stick, but then there's every chance you actually see them in the bar afterwards. And that's led to some interesting moments for me. And I think...
that feels like the understatement of the year, that one.
What I mean by that is centre-halves are much bigger in the bar than they are on the pitch. And when you tell them they're shy for 90 minutes, they might want to fucking have a word afterwards. But I feel as though Robbo would get into it, he'd get carried away, he'd dish some abuse out. I think he'd have a pint, I think he'd enjoy, you know, like, he'd get stuck into the delicacies. We've seen him eating pies and stuff on these various things the club have him doing. So I think he'd get stuck into it, and he'd have a laugh. It was mentioned before that he's a bit of a joker and all that kind of thing. So I think he'd be bang into it, and he'd be good company. So yeah, I'll take Andy Robbo to Precky Gables.
Neil, who are you taking?
I think Andy Robertson could be the right answer, but I've got other things that are sort of rattling through my head. Kelleher, in a really weird way, I think he'd really enjoy it. In that he'd get into it and he'd understand where it was and where it was coming from. I'd like Joel Matip to come with me at one point, because I've just really enjoyed the sudden emergence of Joel Matip as a personality. So the idea of just having an afternoon with Joel stood on the sidelines and me looking up to him like this throughout would be hugely entertaining. It really, really would be. And then, you know, there's other sort of semi-obvious people that you could get stuck into it with, but I just really enjoy going with Divock as well. If I'm really honest about it, I'd just have a lovely time with Divock if we went together. So there's 3 very quick ones of players that you might not think of, but I think you'd have a lovely time with them, not least because they all seem like a great set of lads.
I can't believe you're basically voluntarily choosing to spend 90 minutes with Kelleher going, no, it's Queven. Just to everybody who speaks to him.
Queven would be absolutely fine with it. We get through it together.
I say, as a man who gets names wrong a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I do get names wrong a lot, but I wouldn't get his, not for the 7th or 8th time. I'd have nailed it by that stage.
John, who are you going to non-league with and why?
Curtis Jones, because he'd do a wheelie along the pitch, which I'd be into, and he'd probably have some pyro as well. So Curtis Jones.
Very good, Josh.
My non-league watching career has been quite a large one, to be honest. Like, I don't know if I've mentioned this on podcasts before, but basically before I ever went to a game at Anfield, I was going to watch Macclesfield Town games because it was my local team. It was the team that my cousins were really trying hard to get me into, because they just couldn't be arsed with any of what was going on with the Premier League and that kind of thing. So one of the games I went to, it was absolutely unreal, to be fair, as a football experience, just in terms of pure football experience. Was Premier League. Bolton at the time, including David and Gog, came to Macclesfield Stadium, the Moss Rose, and they played sort of most of their good lads. It was a fairly good team that Bolton put out, and they scored early on. And when they scored early on in the FA Cup game, and Macclesfield were sort of non-league at the time, you're just thinking, oh, this is going to be a long day. But Macclesfield held out until the 89th minute. And then there's a lad called Arnaud Mendy, who I don't expect any of you would know, is a Guinea-Bissau international who was playing for Macclesfield Town at the time. And from 25 yards out, he hit a ball on the half volley into the top corner. And I basically buzzed off for the whole time that I was on Match of the Day behind the goal, basically running along behind the goal like that. So my answer was going to be Joel Matip, just purely because you see Joel Matip's arms doing that behind the goal as I'm running along, and I think that would be a sort of hilarious sight to see at a Macclesfield Town game.
Brilliant. Well, thanks very much, everybody, for asking questions. My thanks to Neil Atkinson, to John Gibbons, to Josh Sexton, and to Gareth Roberts. You've been listening to the Anfield Wrap. My name's Adam Smith, and that was AFQ Football.